The music thumped, lights blazed, cameras clicked, and then she walked out. Not in glitter or silk, but in quiet confidence. A black woman alone on the runway, not matching the show's mold. The crowd paused. Then came the laughter, sharp, smug, merciless. Phones rose, fingers pointed, and eyes rolled. Whispers swirled like smoke. Who let her in? Is this part of the show? But she kept walking, unbothered, each step a rebellion. They thought she was lost, out of place, a joke. But what they didn't know was every masterpiece in the show had her name stitched inside it. The runway gleamed like a river of glass beneath the hot white lights. Flashbulbs popped in rhythmic bursts as the audience sipped champagne and whispered names, designers, celebrities, influencers. It was Fashion Week in New York, and only perfection was allowed to strut through this sacred space. Then she walked out. No one saw where she came from. She wasn't announced, no theme music played. She wasn't tall like the other models. Her heels were slightly scuffed. The gown she wore shimmered, but not in the way the others had. It was too bold, too original, too black. A ripple of confusion spread across the crowd like a dropped wine glass. In the third row, a fashion blogger narrowed her eyes and tilted her phone for a better angle. Is this performance art? From the balcony, a stylist snorted. Somebody's assistant must have got lost backstage. Laughter began like a slow boil, quiet, scattered, nervous. Then it grew, sharper, bolder, merciless. Who let the intern on the runway? She looks like she just found that dress in the back room. She's killing the vibe. The laughter wasn't kind. It wasn't cute. It was mean. Because they thought they could afford to be. Because they believed they were laughing at a mistake. An outsider. An uninvited guest in a room where prestige was gatekept by privilege and beauty came in a very specific shape. But she just kept walking. Head high, shoulders back, chin up, as if she couldn't hear the mockery. As if she didn't care, as if she knew something none of them did. Her walk wasn't polished like a professional model's. It was steady, sure, but filled with something else. Intention. Each step said, I belong here, even if no one else agreed. Backstage, a stage manager dropped her clipboard. Who the hell is that? One of the assistants, pale with panic, stammered, She wasn't on the run sheet. I think she came out wearing dress 47. Get security, someone shouted. She's crashing the show. But the cameras were already rolling, the audience already watching, and whether they were laughing, cringing, or gossiping, every eye was on her. And still, she walked. As she neared the end of the runway, someone from the front row leaned over and muttered, She's going to be a meme by morning. But just before she turned to walk back, she paused, just long enough to meet the eyes of one of the critics. Her expression didn't change. No tears, no shame, just a faint, knowing look, as if she was studying them. Then she pivoted gracefully and walked back down the runway, her dress catching the light like it had something to say. They laughed, they mocked, they assumed, and in doing so, they made one fatal mistake. They didn't ask who she was. Not yet. Backstage was unraveling. The moment she stepped off the runway, the air behind the curtains turned electric, tight with confusion, panic, and anger. The choreographer's headset slipped off his ear as he spun around, eyes wild. Who the hell let her out there? Hair and makeup artists froze mid-brush. Assistants stared wide-eyed, some with hands over their mouths, others pretending to check their clipboards, terrified they'd be blamed next. She wasn't scheduled, someone whispered. She took dress 47, another muttered. The designer's brand rep, slick hair, suit too tight, shoved through the chaos and snapped, Where's the model who was supposed to wear that gown? The answer came from the corner. A young model, still in a robe, sat hunched over, pale and dazed. I fainted. I couldn't breathe. The dress was gone when I woke up. Gone. Taken. Or worn. Security stormed in. Big men with badges and radios. One of them pulled up a still from the live stream. Her? he grunted, pointing at the screen. That's the woman. That's the one who walked. The brand rep's voice hissed with fury. She wasn't approved. She wasn't vetted. She wasn't even supposed to be seen. The room held its breath. She just stole our moment. But somewhere in the far corner of the room, someone wasn't panicking. She stood in the shadows, calm and composed. A slight bead of sweat traced down her temple, not from fear, but from heat and adrenaline. Her hands rested at her sides. Her eyes didn't flinch, because she knew something no one else in that room did. They were all reacting like this was a scandal, a disaster, a breach in protocol. But to her, it was something else entirely. It was truth forcing its way to the surface. Outside, the crowd was still buzzing. Some thought it was a publicity stunt. Others laughed it off as a bizarre fashion moment. But inside, reputations were on the line, and fingers were flying in every direction. She must be from catering. No, I saw her yesterday. She was in the design studio. She doesn't even look like a model. Was she someone's guest? Did she sneak in? Call the head of PR. We have to spin this before Vogue posts something. In the middle of the chaos, the assistant creative director, young, flustered, and 2 skipped meals away from passing out, whimpered. She was sketching something in the back yesterday, thought she was helping stitch a hem. Everyone froze. What did you just say? I thought she was just part of the seamstress team. She had a needle and thread. She looked like she belonged in the back. In that sentence hung everything. She looked like she belonged in the back. And now she had just walked dead center through their most prized illusion. Their fear wasn't that she ruined the show. Their fear was that she made it. Long before the bright lights and runway gossip, there was a 1-bedroom apartment in the heart of Brooklyn, window cracked open for fresh air, even in winter, because the radiator hissed too loud. The table was a salvage door resting on crates. The sewing machine? A relic passed down from her grandmother, its paint chipped but soul intact. This was where she created. Not for applause, not for approval, but because her hands refused to be still. Because she saw beauty in scraps, stories in fabric, futures in sketches. They didn't know the countless nights she bled into her work, literally. Needle pricks, blistered fingers, thread tangled in her braids as she nodded off at 3 a.m., still bent over a hem, rent overdue, groceries rationed. And yet every sketch she made was a declaration. You will see me. They didn't know she had once walked into 10 fashion houses with her portfolio pressed to her chest like armor, only to be told her designs were too bold, too urban, not quite on brand. Translation? Not white enough, not polished enough, not from the right zip code. They didn't know how many times she'd been told to stick to the background, to assist, to support, to sow someone else's vision. But she refused. When they slammed the front door shut, she cracked a window open, submitted her designs under a pseudonym, E. Delarose, a name no one could easily place, a name with no face. And that's how it happened. A buzz built around the designs. Editors loved the asymmetry, the daring structure, the unapologetic blackness woven into elegance. A major label bit, hook, line, and lie. They bought her collection and offered a deal. Work in-house. No public credit yet, but exposure. A foot in the door. She took it. Not because she wanted to be hidden, but because she knew the real battle wasn't at the table. It was getting to the table in the first place. They didn't know that she personally hand-stitched the gown she wore on the runway that day. Dress 47, her favorite, inspired by her mother's church robes and a Yoruba goddess. Power draped in grace. Every pleat told a story. Every seam was intentional. She wore it not because she wanted attention. She wore it because when her model fainted and the chaos hit, no one stepped up to save her work. So she did. They didn't know that when they laughed, they were laughing at the very soul of the show, that the dress they mocked was the centerpiece of their marketing campaign, that the woman they dismissed was the one who had birthed it all, in silence, in shadows, with nothing but grit and raw brilliance. They didn't know, but they were about to find out. The designer's collection was supposed to close with Dress 47. It was the crown jewel, the one teased in press previews, whispered about in fashion circles for its elegance and edge. A perfect finale. A moment meant to take everyone's breath away. But just 10 minutes before the show's climax, the model wearing it collapsed. Dehydrated, nerves shot, her knees buckled like paper. She hit the floor backstage, dress bunched, hair half done. Medics rushed in, and everything stopped. The team panicked. The entire sequence was built around that closing walk. Without it, the show lost its punch. The finale would fall flat. Sponsors, press, influencers, all waiting for that one unforgettable image. No one knew what to do. No one except her. She had been standing in the corner, silent, holding a sewing kit in one hand and her resolve in the other. No title, no entourage, just a deep knowledge that this collection, her collection, deserved to be seen. Fully, completely. The stylist shouted, "We'll skip the look." But she stepped forward. "I'll walk it." The room turned, confusion, amusement, scorn. "You?" one assistant scoffed. "This is couture, not karaoke night." But she didn't flinch. She slipped the dress over her shoulders with the ease of someone who'd worn it 100 times in her mind. Because she had. She had draped it, cut it, stitched it. She had sculpted it on her own body late at night when the mannequin didn't match her curves. She was the muse, and when she stepped into the light, no one could stop her. Backstage shouts turned into stunned silence as she passed. The audience, unaware of the chaos behind the scenes, saw only a new figure emerging, regal, radiant, real. Her walk wasn't perfect. It didn't need to be. What she carried was not just fabric. It was the weight of being unseen, the years of rejection, the months of being called just the help, the sting of knowing the industry loved her work but not her face. And still, she walked. The cameras clicked, not because of pity, but because something about her was magnetic. She walked like someone who had nothing left to prove and everything left to claim. She saved the show, not with theatrics, not with spectacle, but with presence. She filled that runway not just with beauty, but with truth. And for a brief, shining moment, no one could deny it. Backstage, jaws dropped. The brand rep who had called her a mistake minutes earlier watched the crowd rise to their feet, clapping. The stylist who wanted to skip the look stared, mouth open. She walked off the runway exactly the way she came on, proud, composed, unforgettable. And for the first time, the whispers weren't mocking. They were curious. Who is she? The irony? She'd been right there all along. The internet doesn't wait. By the time she stepped off the runway, a blurry clip of her walk had already hit TikTok. The caption, "Who is this crashing the finale?" The comments were brutal. "She looks lost. This better be a joke." The confidence, though, but then someone posted a close-up, not of her face, of the dress. The camera zoomed in on the intricate embroidery stitched along the hem, barely visible, elegant, intentional, and there, woven in silver thread like a signature, E. Delarose. One comment changed everything. Wait, that's the designer's tag. She designed that dress? Silence rippled through the crowd. Phones buzzed in the front row. Fashion editors leaned into each other, whispering. A producer backstage flipped open her laptop, eyes going wide. The brand's official page had just posted the full collection credits, and, at the very bottom, in small, overlooked type, Creative Design Direction, Elaina Delarose. Not a ghost, not a myth, not a white man in a suit. Her, the woman they'd laughed at, the woman they called a mistake, the woman who just saved their entire show from imploding. Now they knew. The PR manager fumbled with her headset. "Oh my God, she's the Delarose. Get her back out there. We need a photo. We need damage control." But Elaina was already walking out again, this time not in a gown, but in her own skin. She stood at the edge of the media line, eyes steady, hands calm. No tears, no apology. Reporters surged forward. "Are you the real designer? Why didn't they credit you properly? Why did you walk instead of the model?" She took the mic with quiet grace, the same calm she'd walked the runway with, and she spoke. "I walked because no one else would. I walked because the moment was about the work, not the politics. I didn't need permission to wear my own creation." The room fell silent. The stylist who had scoffed turned red. The influencer who laughed the loudest looked down at her phone, avoiding eye contact, and the man who wore her designs while mocking her walk slowly zipped up his designer jacket. Everyone now knew. She wasn't an accident. She was the architect. She was the mind, the hands, the name. All the mocking, the laughter, the assumptions. It wasn't just tasteless now. It was embarrassing. And worse, it was public. The headlines flipped in real time. The mystery woman who stole the runway. She owns it. Elaina Delarose, the designer they tried to erase. They laughed at her. Now they're scrambling to apologize. But Elaina didn't wait for validation. She turned, gave the cameras a slight nod, and walked away. And now, no one dared to laugh. They could only watch. Suddenly, the room got very quiet. The same crowd that once roared with laughter now sat stiff in their chairs, mouths dry, fingers nervously scrolling, avoiding eye contact like it was contagious. Elaina Delarose, the woman they mocked, doubted, dismissed, had just been revealed as the visionary behind the most talked-about collection of the season. And no one knew what to say. The laughter they once wore like a badge of superiority now clung to them like shame. In the silence that followed, all they could hear was their own echo, how loud they'd been, how certain they were, how wrong they were. In the VIP lounge, a fashion influencer with millions of followers quietly deleted her earlier Instagram story, the one with Elena's walk and a caption filled with laughing emojis. Now she posted something different, a photo of the collection with a soft focus filter and the words, "A true visionary. Respect the designer." No apology, just quiet revision. That's how it went. No one stood up and said, "We were wrong." They just adjusted, backpedaled, rewrote their reactions in real time, pretended they hadn't laughed, that they hadn't judged her the moment she stepped out. It was too late. The internet had receipts, screenshots of comments, recordings of snide remarks, videos of people laughing while she walked. Even now, Twitter, no, X, was erupting with threads calling out the hypocrisy. This is why black women create in silence. Look what happens when they dare to be seen. The stylist who once called her a disaster posted a cryptic tweet. Growth comes from uncomfortable moments. The replies were savage. Growth or guilt? You mean silence comes from getting exposed? Backstage, the energy was thick. No one wanted to be the first to speak. Even the brand's lead executive, the one who signed off on stripping her name from the top of the press release, now sat at a corner table, nervously stirring his untouched drink. He knew. They all knew. They'd tried to bury brilliance beneath branding. They'd tried to keep the face behind the fabric out of the frame. But Elaina stepped into the light anyway. And now, with the spotlight blinding, they were the ones exposed. What stung the most wasn't just that they'd misjudged her. It was that she never fought them, never yelled, never demanded a seat at their table. She simply was. And that somehow was worse, because it meant the whole world saw their arrogance, their laughter, before they even realized what they were laughing at. So they went silent, not because they learned, but because they were seen. And that silence, it was louder than any applause. The next morning, the fashion world was in a frenzy, scrambling to piece together what had happened, how they had missed the mark, how they had mocked the woman who had quietly shattered every expectation. Elaina Delarose had become more than a name. She was a symbol, a reminder of everything that had been overlooked, dismissed, and ignored. And now, the very institutions that once tried to erase her were scrambling to claim her as their own. But what good were apologies when you'd already proven the world's ability to forget? The first apology came in the form of a carefully crafted Instagram post from the brand, a white background, corporate font, and a perfectly symmetrical photo of Elaina in her gown with the caption, "We were wrong. Elaina Delarose deserves the recognition she earned. We will be doing better." Respect the artist. No mention of who had tried to silence her. No face-to-face conversation. Just a single post thrown out like an afterthought. A corporate mea culpa. The public saw through it instantly. Comment after comment poured in. It's a bit late for this, don't you think? Let's see how real this change is. You can't erase history with a hashtag. The response was swift. The apology didn't feel like growth. It felt like damage control. But not everyone in the industry hid behind hashtags. The influencer who had deleted her laughing story the day before sent Elaina a direct message. Her words were simple. "I'm sorry for what I said yesterday. I see you now." Elaina read it twice before she typed back, "Thank you. But this isn't just about me. It's about all of us, how we see each other." Then, the designer who had first ignored her work reached out. This one was different. It was a phone call. "I owe you an apology," the voice on the other end said. "I never saw the value in your vision. I was blind. I hope you'll forgive me, and I hope you'll let me work with you." Elaina let the silence linger. For a long beat, there was nothing but static on the line. And then she spoke. "Forgiveness isn't a privilege. It's a choice. But the work speaks louder than words. So let's see if you're ready to listen." It wasn't forgiveness she was giving. It wasn't forgiveness they deserved. But she wasn't interested in being their token lesson learned. She wasn't here for their guilt. She was here for her future, and it didn't need their validation to be real. By noon, the apologies kept coming, but they were all too familiar. The brand's PR team reached out with an offer to collaborate. The same executives who had once dismissed her requested meetings to discuss creative partnerships. And every apology that followed felt like they were asking for her forgiveness, but what they really wanted was a piece of her empire. But Elaina didn't need to say anything more. She'd already built her kingdom. She'd already shown them who she was. And in the end, they didn't need her forgiveness. They just needed to learn how to listen. The world didn't just see her anymore. They knew her. A week after the show, Elaina Delarose stood at the head of her own press conference. The room was packed. Editors, designers, photographers, influencers, and yes, the same people who once laughed at her on the runway. But they weren't laughing now. They were waiting. The weight of the spotlight felt different when it was earned. She wore a sharp, tailored suit. No frills, no "look at me" drama, just power in every seam. Her hair was styled simply, and her hands were steady on the podium. For once, there was no need for bravado, no forced smiles, no playing along, because in that room there were no questions left unanswered. Her presence commanded respect without a word. The questions came fast. First, the obligatory ones about the show, the fallout, the apology tour everyone had been watching unfold. But Elena's answer was measured, calm, true. "I never needed their approval," she said, her voice steady. "I don't exist for their validation. I'm here because I've always known who I am and what I create, and this is just the beginning." And with that, the floodgates opened. Journalists who had once questioned her background now asked about her vision. The same editors who had ignored her work in the past begged for an interview about her process, her inspirations, her journey. No more mockery, no more assumptions, just respect. Backstage, the same team that once tried to erase her was now working with her. They had no choice but to acknowledge the brilliance they'd almost missed. The irony wasn't lost on her, but it didn't faze her either. She'd gotten here on her own terms. They were now the ones trying to earn their place in her world. Her phone buzzed. A message from one of her old mentors, the one who had always believed in her, who told her to never stop creating. It was simple. "You've always known how to make them see." And she smiled. But Elaina didn't need the constant reminders. She already knew. She looked out over the room and saw something else. New faces, eager faces, Young designers, creatives, and artists who had been watching her rise. They were hungry, just like she had been. They were ready to step into their own power. And in that moment, she realized something. She wasn't just here to make clothes. She was here to open doors, to tear down the walls, to show the world that brilliance doesn't fit in a box. It doesn't need permission to exist. Elaina Delarose was no longer a hidden genius. She wasn't someone who walked into rooms to be underestimated. She was the one people looked to now. The world was finally seeing her. And this time, they wouldn't look away.